Hello and welcome to the virtual town meeting warrant presentation for the fall annual town meeting. This year, the fall annual town meeting will take place on Monday, October 17th at 7 p.m. in the middle school, high school auditorium. Please be there prompt, check in and be in your seats by 7 p.m. because the moderator likes to move along quickly and he's very much a stickler about being ready to go at 7 p.m. So there are 14 articles on this town meeting warrant. I will present most of them, and Jen will help out. There are 14 articles on this town meeting warrant. So let's get started. Article 1 is amending the annual FY23 budget that was voted at the May 9th annual town meeting. We do this every year because the budget was really put together in March and April of the previous fiscal year. We had an idea, but we didn't have the actual number from state aid, and we didn't have the number for new growth, which is typically done in the fall of the current fiscal year. So what we are doing is increasing the budget by $175,677, and we're utilizing the additional state aid we received, as well as the additional new growth above what we budgeted in the annual budget. And what we're doing is using these revenues to deal with some unanticipated cost increase. The largest of which is $125,000 increase to the Norfolk Aggie School appropriation. We budgeted for 4 students to attend Norfolk Aggie. This is an additional 5 that are going to Norfolk Agricultural School as of September 1. So that's $25,000 per student, so that's where that number comes up. And there are a number of other changes, additions that we've had to add, but all total it comes out to $175,677 to increase the FY23 budget. Article 2 is to use revenues from an agreement that we entered into with American Tower. For $500,000 will go towards the roadway improvement funds, and $500,000 will go towards other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, which is essentially in Sutton is retirees' health care. How we got here was that we entered into an agreement to keep the perpetual easement in place and eliminate the revenue share with American Tower. So American Tower will continue to operate this cell tower over on Stone School Road. Won't pay annual rent to us, but what they will pay is $1.4 million for this right. So $500,000 goes towards roadways, $500,000 goes to other post-employment benefits, and $400,000 remains in free cash for future appropriation. So Article 2 is to address this issue and have these funds appropriated as the board wishes. Article 3 is to have additional funds go towards the other post-employment trust fund. The Board of Selectmen has a policy, and the policy states, one aspect of the policy states that 10% of free cash, as well as revenue from the cell tower and Town Farm Road, go towards OPEB. This year, that's $350,000 going towards OPEB. Free cash is roughly $3 million, and the rent from the Town Farm Road cell tower is close to $50,000. So that's the little explanation on that article. Article 4 is increase the amount towards the Special Education Stabilization Fund. This is, per the board's policy again, is that we have the Medicaid reimbursement above what we budgeted, and this year that number is $150,000. And again, this appropriation comes from free cash, and this will address that, the board's policy on that article. Article 5 is to essentially transfer $20,336 from the compensated absences reserve fund into this 2023 sick and vacation buyback. This is to pay for the retirement, ultimately, of the superintendent, Ted Friend, as well as our assessor, Joyce Sartinola. So these funds will go from the compensated absences reserve fund into the buyback, and we'll be able, the town will be able to pay for this sick and vacation time buyback that these employees receive. And we thank them for their service to the town. Article 6 is to fund the Depot Street appraisals for that bridge repair. This is a town-owned bridge that the state has agreed to renovate, which will probably be a multi-million-dollar cost in the end. But the state asked us to do appraisals for temporary easements and so forth for the landowners along that way. So we're appropriating $10,000 for this purpose, and hopefully this takes care of the town's need, and then we can have the state begin their work with full design and construction of this bridge.
You will have, once the appraisals are done, an amount will be determined for the value of the temporary and the permanent easements that are appraised. So there will likely, depending on the appraisals, be a subsequent article at May town meeting or next fall's town meeting to actually pay for the value of those temporary and permanent easements. So this is step one. We will have a subsequent article, relatively minor, I would guess, based on what happened with Blackstone Street Bridge, and in exchange for well over $4 million in bridge replacement costs that'll be covered by the state. So our contributions to the project are next to nil compared to
pretty good bang for your buck on that one.
State, right?
So we really appreciate the state's help on repair of that critical bridge in the town of Sutton. Article 7 is to vote to transfer $7,000 from free cash to survey Van Dyke Park. We received a state grant recently, the park grant, in the amount of $85,800 to essentially overhaul. And Jen, you can probably speak more specifically to this, but the $10,000, the $7,000 is for the survey of that particular parcel. Now, so we've got to kind of cordon off that area on Huff Road of that particular park, and that's the area that we're going to survey and create a plan and so forth that will satisfy the state's requirement. But in the meantime, we did receive an $85,000 grant to do the work. So you want to talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so basically what we'll be restricting is about a 7.5 acre area of land. That is the area where this park is located, the soccer field, and all the baseball fields. The balance of the parcel is actually large. The senior center and the wastewater treatment plant are located on this same parcel. So what we want to restrict is only that portion which is currently used for recreation and the area that's likely to be used for recreation going forward. So the survey that's being done, and we'll have a conceptual plan actually any day now. We actually do have a rough conceptual already, is about 7.5 acres. And again, it's pretty much the corner of Huff Road and Whitens Road, encompassing the current recreational amenities on that property.
Okay. And congratulations on that grant, and I know we had some help from some residents as well participating in that, so that was a nice get.
Thank you.
Article 8 is to pay prior year invoices. We have a few that we're trying to address. A couple of them are related to a pilot agreement that the company didn't move forward with this solar array, and ultimately the individual that drew up the pilot agreement, as well as some engineering costs, were not paid by the developer because the developer went out of business, and we couldn't get the monies from them. So So that in total is $2,000 to develop the pilot agreement for the solar array, and $983 from Graves Engineering related to that same agreement. In addition, we have a $2,234 Medicaid billing, an old bill that got lost during COVID. So we do owe that money, and so that's another prior year invoices that we have to pay. We are appropriating $5,217 from free cash to address these issues.
And the pilot agreement you mentioned is payment in lieu of taxes?
That's correct.
The typical agreement that we establish with solar installations, so they pay an equal amount for a term instead of
High on the first end and then lower at the end.
depreciating with
Yeah.
the panels depreciating? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Article 9 is, again, sponsored by the Sewer Commission. And they are contributing $500,000 to upgrade and repair of the Wilkinsonville sewer. This will go along with the one-stop grant, which was $3.5 million that we submitted in the spring, I think, and as well as the $500,000 from the town through the ARPA funds to try to have this sewer project take place in Wilkes. It's important for this project to move forward. There are some 1,200 households that feed into the sewer line, and right now the sewer line is inadequate. It goes cross-country underneath some railroad tracks over to Blackstone Street and to a pump station. So this will relocate that pump station from Blackstone Street to 122A on Providence Road, and then feed up to the Millbury pump station. So all of this project in total probably costs over $5 million in total. But so we are putting together the financing for this project. This is the Sewer Commission's contribution through connection fees. The $500,000 is a request from Article 9. Article 10 is to acquire the easement for that new pump station on 122A at 60 Providence Turnpike. This allows us to put the pump station at this location, as well as add additional fencing, removal of trees, and some other requests as well. The total of that is $60,000, and that is coming from sewer connection fees as well. So that's Article 10. Article 11 is part of the negotiations with the landowner of 60 Providence Road, was a request that connection fees for the 4 units of the residential part be exempted from having to pay the $5,000 connection fee. So that was part of our negotiations, part of what we agreed upon, but this does require town meeting support. Again, it's for future connections of 4 different units for a total of $20,000. It's not, we're not losing any money per se, but we just won't collect $20,000 in connection fees when these units connect to the sewer line that goes from that new pump station up to Millbury Pump Station. Article 12 is to pay for a new generator at 40 Whitens Road, as well as other aspects to that, transfer switch, pump, etc. This generator is original to the sewer system that was installed back in early 2000s, and the generator, ran its end of life essentially, and now we have to replace this generator and deal with the associated costs with doing that. Now, we've ordered the generator. The generator is not available until maybe December. In the meantime, we've had a rental generator to deal with the pump station flow. So that's an additional $4,000 a month So all these costs are lumped into one article, and that's $110,000 coming from retained earnings within the sewer department. The sewer department retained earnings and connection fees are looped into one item that Department of Revenue certifies as of June 30th. Department of Revenue certified 1.45 million, essentially, close to that number, in retained earnings. So that's connection fees and retained earnings. So we have the money available to do this work, and this is the work and necessary improvements to the sewer system that serves quite a bit of the town of Sutton. So, Article 13 is the earth removal bylaw. Jen?
All right, Article 13 is sponsored by the Planning Board. It is sponsored by the Planning Board because a number of years ago, the town of Sutton eliminated their separate earth removal board, and they placed the Planning Board in that role. The reason they did that is because even though earth removal by commercial operators was one of Sutton's first industries, and there were almost 10 different operators throughout the town over the years, there were currently, when the Planning Board took over, only 3 commercial earth removal operations. There's currently only 1 remaining. That would be Pine, Sand, and Stone, operating across the Sutton-Douglas line on land of Mary Bedoin and others, but just Mary Bedoin and Sutton. So, the Planning Board is proposing changes to this bylaw, primarily because over the last year or so, the board's been frustrated that earth removal operations that some of a significant scale, just some of consequential within the residential districts, they didn't technically fall within the town's existing regulations. As such, there wasn't any ability to require advance notifications or public meetings, or to review anything other than stormwater impacts, or to require any kind of mitigation. Because of this, the board asked that I look at the existing earth removal bylaw and make some revisions to that bylaw to capture the gaps or the loopholes within our existing bylaw that had kind of frustrated public participation and regulation by the town. So, what the bylaw changes do is they amend the definition of earth removal to include earth disturbance as well, whether or not earth is removed from the site. As you might guess, when you shift around a large amount of earth on any location, it can have any number of impacts, including dust and noise, emissions, and other environmental effects. So the board thought it was really important that when you have an operation over a certain size, that whether or not the earth leaves the site is immaterial. It needs to be going through a review process, and they need to have the ability to mitigate any impacts. So that's the most major change that the changes do. The bylaw changes will also require a public hearing process for earth removal over 3,000 cubic yards that doesn't fall within other uses that require permits. The fact is, anything that undergoes site plan review or a special permit or subdivision control is already going through a public hearing process. They will still have to file an earth removal application, and they will still have to supply some more information than would be required under those other permits, but they'll just be handled in the same hearing. So they're still going through a hearing, but those uses are already going through a hearing anyways. This is really for things that aren't already going through that hearing process, which was the case on one particular project over the last year, where they were just working on a site to bring it to grade, and they weren't under a permit process, and that was one of the loopholes that we're closing with this bylaw. The bylaws exempt single-family agricultural uses where all of the earth stays on a site. So or where less than 3,000 cubic yards is leaving the site. So we wanted to make sure, even though we were adjusting some thresholds, that we didn't onerously impact your standard single-family construction, or agricultural operations that have gone through site plan review a million years ago and that are ongoing, especially in a community where we're a right-to-farm community that likes to encourage agricultural operations. So previously, the bylaw used the term exemption, but it really wasn't an actual exemption. You had to fill out an application and go through a process, although oddly, that wasn't the way the bylaw was being utilized all the years it was in advance. So now we're actually exempting. You don't need to apply if you're a single-family home construction or an agricultural use, or you're just keeping all your own dirt on your own site, or you're exporting less than 3,000 cubic yards. You do have to comply with some basic standards, which protect your neighbors, but you're not going through an application and or a hearing process. The bylaws also require more complete information on both full and abbreviated permits. So permits other than single family and agriculture. There were some gaps in what you used to have to provide, including kind of where you're cutting and where you're filling, which is important to your potential effect on the people around you. So the bylaw changes also increase the amount of earth a single-family home or an agricultural product can disturb or remove from a site under that exemption. The old number was 300 cubic yards, and in detailed discussions with our building commissioner, who is the guy with his eyes on the ground, he pointed out that the smallest of average foundations in Sutton for like a 30 by 50 home is over 600 cubic yards of excavation. So he said, none of us knew where the 300 cubic yard number came from, but he said, really, if you have a house and a garage and you put in a pool, you're at almost 3,000 cubic yards. So never mind your septic system and just leveling your yard to get in a small yard or lawn. So it was his recommendation that we up that number to 3,000 cubic yards. Again, trying to make sure that the typical single-family homeowner or small agricultural operation wouldn't be caught within a more onerous review process and have to be doing engineering plans and calcs. What the bylaws also do is they put applicants on notice by reading the bylaw that if their project requires blasting, there may be additional requirements. The reality is, if a project requires blasting, or any in the past that required blasting, the board had the ability within the bylaws to require some mitigations and some notifications, but again, only if they were taking material off the site. Now we've plugged the hole, so it's whether the earth stays on the site or goes off the site, but we want to make it really obvious in the wording that particularly for blasting, which can have farther reaching effects and different kinds of effects, that anybody who anticipates doing blasting knows in writing, in black and white, that you are probably going to need some advanced notifications and some additional mitigations above just moving dirt around on a site. What the bylaw changes don't do, they don't require, again, trying to stress this, a typical single family or agricultural use to do any permitting. The old bylaws technically require that. This eliminates that. There's really no need for that. All of that kind of review is covered within your building permit process. They don't change anything for pre-existing commercial operations. Again, there's only one of those in town. But back when the original earth removal bylaw was revamped in the 80s, the town felt it was really important that those businesses who had provided a foundation of growth here in the town not be really punitively affected. So we're just carrying that forward and have restated that any existing commercial operations, again, from the time frame that was there, 1987, that pre-existed then, which would be pine, sand, and stone, they don't have any additional requirements. They have to go through their public hearing process every other year. but it doesn't change anything else for them. Nothing has changed. And they do not change the existing minimum permit provisions, which are basically conditions that get placed, and they don't change any of the operating standards. We have had great success with our minimum conditions. We've had great success with our operating standards, and there was no need to change any of that. So all of those remain the same. So that's basically the gist of why we're changing the bylaw and what the major things the bylaw does and doesn't do are. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer those. Send me an email, give me a call during the day, or we can address those on town meeting floor if need be.
Sounds good. So the last article is actually a citizen's petition. So the citizen's petition actually was presented to the select board at their meeting on September 27th. And you can find those minutes online at www.suttonma.org, and you can review the thoughts behind the petition for the quorum of 100 people, registered voters at town meetings. So that's it. Again, you know, come early, you know, be in your seats by 7 p.m. You have to register and sign in, and then, you know, take your seats in the auditorium. So again, town meeting is Monday, October 17th at 7 p.m. in the middle school, high school auditorium. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.